A battle to the death. Classic albums clashing till there's only one left. A killer contest, but before we get to it, there's rules to this game, so let me tell you how we do it. 8 classic albums, 1 classic year. Draw 'em out the hat and chew the fat right here. We rate 'em, relate 'em, discuss 'em and debate 'em, analyze the beats and quote the lyrics verbatim. When all is said and done, we put it to the vote and tell you which of them is one. Then it's to the semis and the final for the vinyl cassette or CD. So who will it be? We going all in, so on the sound of the whistle, let the games begin. Record shot. To the hit, the hop, you don't stop.
Hello and welcome to Hip Hop World Cup, the podcast that pits golden age hip hop albums against each other in a contest to find the ultimate champion. I'm your host, Danny Phillips, and joining me in the Hip Hop World Cup studio are Steve Hitchcock. All right, Steve?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Hi, everybody.
And James Larry Luscombe. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. So after being out on the road for the last episode, we are back in our usual studio deep within FIFA headquarters in Zurich. It's good to be home, boys, isn't it? Like being out on the road for so long.
It is. It's quite exciting out there, though, wasn't it?
It was. It was
traveling all around the world for doing this.
Definitely, and what happens on tour stays on tour as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And the year we're looking at in this episode is 1996, the year when boom bap started making way for bling and mafioso rap and all that sort of stuff, and the Puff Daddy era and all that sort of thing. I think it's right on the cusp of it.
Yeah,
it was just creeping in, but it was still a very, very special year for hip hop. Look, let's just get your initial thoughts on this year, 1996 in hip hop. Let's start with you, James.
Yeah, this is a funny one for me. I think 1996 is kind of the year when I stopped being so interested in hip hop. I know you're the same. We kind of share the exact same musical history, really, but we both started listening to like US house music in this year a lot more. And I think probably by the middle of 96, I just wasn't really checking for the hip hop at all, really, apart from 1 or 2 releases from familiar names. So yeah, I think this is the year where the rot starts to set in hip hop wise, personally.
Yeah, and do you share those sentiments, Steve? Was it a sort of transformative year for you, or was it where it started to get even better?
Yeah, transformative in the opposite direction for me. This is when I started to buy more hip hop and to get into it in a kind of bigger way. So I have different memories from this year. I actually think this is a really good year, and I do think there is some interesting hip hop afterwards. But I do agree this is the kind of end of that proper golden era.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, even though Larry, you kind of moved away from it did leave this perfectly kind of. It's a capsule of hip hop, the golden era, kind of nicely packaged era that we can look back on now and really love, knowing that it kind of changed after that.
I do think, there's the fact that we just started listening to different music, which I think we would have done regardless of what hip hop was sounding like. But hip hop also did start to sound different.
Yeah,
definitely from 97. And it starts to change from 96 for me. There's quite an obvious way in which just the sonics of it change.
I think we've talked about it before, haven't we? About the sort of the emergence of the keyboard beat, and people were getting wise to samples and charging extortionate amounts of money to clear samples and to use samples and stuff like that. It didn't seem to bother Puff Daddy as it went along, sampling huge artists, but he had the money to do it. But
that's it, if you've got the budget for it.
But a lot of these these sort of grassroots rappers just couldn't and had to start using keyboard beats. It changed the fabric of hip hop. It changed the way it went.
You can see the benefit of it for having completely original compositions. Because if you're sampling James Brown or somebody like that, that's like 50% of your publishing gone before you've even started. So it makes sense to do that. And I like a lot of more modern hip hop that is completely original material, but like this crossover period just didn't work for me. It sounds cheap and nasty, a lot of it.
Yeah. All right, well, we can dig into that a little bit later on. But I should just point out that we're recording this on the day of Prince Phillips' funeral. So I personally think it's a fitting tribute to him and his legacy that we're talking about. His personal favourite year, 1996.
Yeah.
I mean, his favourite album was Paper Chasing by Sugar T, which but it's not featured in our top, so it's fine for me to talk about it. But yeah, so
I always thought he quite liked the Punk Barbarians album.
I think he would have put that
Sex,
second.
Props, Cream, and the drama in between.
Yeah,
which I only just learned existed, but apparently he was quite a big fan of that.
Oh yeah, no, he flew the flag for that album. Definitely, he loved it. Absolutely loved it. He'd be, cruising down the street in that 4x4 that he crashed in, bumping that non-stop.
That's why he crashed, I suppose.
Why he crashed, probably just
Too loud.
banging his head like that. Anyway, so right, let's just have a quick recap of the rules. You probably know how it works by now if you've been listening long enough, but it's we've whittled it down to 8 albums, our favourite 8 albums from the year 1996. We've drawn them against each other in round 1. Those 2 albums will then play each other, we'll discuss them, vote on them, and the winner goes through to the semi-finals, and the winner of those goes through to the final, and we'll end up with an ultimate champion for that year, our favourite album, in a kind of a World Cup type scenario. So that's how it works. Larry, have you had any problems with True Score this week? Any upgrades? Any problems? Anything?
It's a bit of a sore subject, actually. I haven't been able to utilise the True Score machine stroke system this week. I've had to
What?
Yeah, big problems with one of the exhaust pipes that just can't be unbunged. Some lyrics got caught up in one of the music pipes, and anyway, I've had to I've licensed I've taken out a license for Accurate Analysis, which is it's a fledgling it's a startup out of San Francisco. It's worked quite well. Couple kind of iffy scores come out, but I think it's going to work. It's just going to have to do for this week, unfortunately, and hopefully have the old girl back up and running next time.
Oh, let's look forward to that. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what this new system comes up with. Be really interesting. All right, cool. Good to hear. Oh, and just before we move on to round 1, just little surprise for you both. We've got another special guest coming up at the end of the show to talk about the final, to get his views on the winners. Somebody he was key to a major sporting event in 1996. Ex-England boss Terry Venables will be joining us. Massive hip hop fan,
legend.
El Tel, just lining up now. Him on the line now. So we'll hear his thoughts later, just before the final, or just after the final, sorry.
And the phone line is working.
Yeah,
I've checked it. It's fine.
It.
Crystal clear audio this week. I swapped to a different phone.
Yeah.
I've been in touch with Vodafone, BT, as a joint thing. So we're all good to go, all sorted. So look forward to that later in the show.
Good.
So before we move on, let's just talk about some of the albums that were around in 1996, and then some of our honourable mentions, just very quickly. Just some of the albums that didn't quite make it before I reveal which 8 did. There was a big one for me, which was Cellar Dwellers, Realms and Reality. That was one of my absolute favourite albums from this year. I sort of put it in my top 10, but I don't think you guys knew it kind of well enough to include it in any of yours, but it was one of my absolute favourites. I listen to it all the time. It's a sort of hip hop that's right up my street, kind of jazzy, really crisp beats, and I just love the interplay between the 2 members of Cellar Dwellers whose names I can't remember right now. But
Advance to Boardwalk is a great track.
Yeah, Advance to Boardwalk is amazing. But there's so many great tracks on that album. Advance to Boardwalk, We Got It Hemmed, Land, what's it called? Land of the something. And Perfect Match is one of my favourite.
Perfect Match,
of all time. Love Perfect Match. It's kind of on the R&B side of stuff, but I really didn't mind that.
It's Good Dweller on it.
Good Dwellers, that's the other one. Really good. I mean, there's so many great tracks on it, and also it's a lot of it's produced by Nick Wiz, who was one of these slept-on producers who I loved back in the day, and he actually features again later on, so I won't say too much. But
I was kind of hoping that that album would make it into the final 8, because it would just give me an excuse it would force me to listen to it.
Yeah, well,
I like something that you like so much. I kind of have a feeling that I would really like it as well, but I don't know. I just can't. I'm too lazy to bother listening to it. Even though I love Good Dweller, if there's an album full of songs like that, surely I would Love it.
Yeah,
I don't
you'd
know
enjoy
why. I really don't know why I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, well, I would recommend if you do get a chance checking it out because it's really good. Steve, just give us a couple of your honourable mentions.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about how kind of hip hop diverged at this point, but I think there's kind of two seminal albums for like the underground kind of explosion, and one is DJ Shadow, Introducing. I know you two don't like that, but I think it is obviously very highly regarded. And what I would consider personally is the best album in this year is Dr. Octagonologist by Dr. Octagon, which is Kool Keith, and it's produced by Dan the Automator, and it is just a phenomenal album. And it is, I like Kool Keith, he's just wacky, zany, and I think, Danny, you'd enjoy his kind of obsession with like butt cracks and all that sort of stuff, but disappointed it's not in. Brilliant album.
Cool. And how about you, Larry?
There's nothing for me really that didn't make it. The only kind of one, it wouldn't have been eligible because it's an EP, but Company Flow had an EP called Fun Crusher this year. The following year they released like an expanded version of it, Fun Crusher Plus, and although I didn't get into that album in 96 or 97, it was kind of not until I discovered LP and sort of Def Jux later on, but yeah, I love that album, and not quite sure if I would have really liked it at the time, but yeah, that's the only one that really springs to mind that I would maybe have liked to see them there, and perhaps Stakes Is High as well. I think that's probably the best De La Soul album for me.
Yeah, it's a good shout because Stakes Is High is a good album. I think I was quite surprised it didn't kind of get more love from you guys, try and get it in there, because I thought that would the sort of thing that'd be up your street. The other ones you mentioned, Eyez, I'm not familiar with them. I think I'd kind of, by then I was kind of focusing on the big main albums, and I wasn't really digging as deep as you two at that particular time. Just before we go on, I just want to give one dishonourable mention from this year, and that's The Dogfather by Snoop Doggy Dogg. I cannot think. Yeah, one of the biggest disappointments in hip hop history. There's one good track on it called Groupie, which is Daz, one of the classic Daz beats, but the rest of it is absolutely appalling.
Was it on Death Row still? Or was this the first one that was on? It wasn't on No Limit.
No, it was a Death Row one. Just full of potential. Looking forward to it so much, and it just fell flat. Anyway,
he is a funny one, Snoop. Like, he releases an album pretty much every year, doesn't he? And some of them are still genuinely like really, really good.
Yeah, I mean,
Bush. Bush was really good, produced by
Bush.
Pharrell.
Yeah,
and there's also the one that Dame Funk produced, 7 Days of Funk. I absolutely love that. Sort of like a long EP, but he also releases
puts out a lot of poor stuff, doesn't he? Yeah.
And didn't he do a reggae album, Snoop Lion, which is
Rhythm and Gangster, that has some good tracks on it as well.
That's one with signs and stuff on it, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, I think he really, let the side down in 96. That rightfully did not make it anywhere near this top 8. Okay, so what did make it in? Well, let's have a look at the 8. They are Tupac's All Eyez on Me, Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, It Was Written by Nas, Cloud9 by 9, Mad Skillz From Where, Ghostface Killah's Ironman, Wrath of the Math by Jeru the Damaja, and Sadat X's Wild Cowboys. So a really strong 8 there. So look, without further ado, let's move on with round 1.
World Cup, round 1. World Cup, round 1. World Cup, round 1. World Cup, round 1.
So in this episode, we have a slight change. Unfortunately, you might have seen in the news this week, we lost the rights to broadcast the round 1 games live, out of our hands, I'm afraid. But we do retain the rights to give you a full highlights package with all the action, all the key action. The first game that happened in round 1 was Tupac's All Eyez on Me versus Jeru the Damaja's Wrath of the Math, Jeru's second album there, against Tupac's first on Death Row. And in an amazing, it was a whitewash in a way, Tupac beat Jeru 3-0. Now that could be seen as a bit controversial if you're looking at it from the perspective of
Jeru the Damaja.
Jeru the Damaja and the hip hop purist, it's kind of like, It's real. I mean, it's a crushing blow for Jeru to lose that 3-0. What do you make of that one, Steve? I mean, that's
it's not a fair result, really, is it? That the scoreline doesn't really paint a true picture there. Yeah, it's a great album. If the listeners haven't listened to it, it's DJ Premier produced, I think, the whole album. Jeru's a great rapper. He's really interesting, isn't he? He's like a quite clever rapper. He sounds really good, like a little bit semi kind of political, and just loads of great tracks on there. Loads of great tracks. So yeah, I was hoping it wasn't going to come up against All Eyes on Me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, Tupac's kind of like, it's a bit like a juggernaut, isn't it? It's kind of come in, smashed it through. You know, it's like a really big, showy, loud album, and because we've got this memory of it being this amazing album, it's kind of bulldozed Jeru's album. But in reality, I think Jeru's album is the better hip hop album.
Wow, that's interesting.
Well, no, but listen to, as a hip hop album for the hip hop purists, right? Jeru the Damaja, it strips it right down to the very core of what it is. It's a beat and Jeru rhyming over the top of it. Really stripped down, really raw primo
boom
beats.
bap.
Yeah, boom bap. Jeru's got a lot to say. It's boom bap. It's stripped down. And I just think if you're into hip hop and the core essence of what hip hop is, this album encapsulates that. Is that? Do you agree with that, Larry? Or do you?
I don't know. I mean, I have to come clean. I only just thought of that one. It's quite good, isn't it?
I'll put a sound effect in there.
Yeah, this although it was a 3-0 trouncing of Jeru, like for me, it was quite a plodding midfield battle. This particular round. Not two albums that I'm kind of overly kind of in love with, really. Jeru, I don't know. It's not as good as his debut. I think we can all kind of probably agree on that.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that.
And I don't know. I'd go so far as to say it's kind of pretty much a definition of a sort of bog standard album for me. It's just a bit of a plodder, just treading the same ground as Sunrises in the East. DJ Premier, kind of, you know, solid enough beats, but they're all kind of quite, I don't know, he's just not really on top of his game, sort of second tier beats, really, I think.
It's funny you should say that, because I was kind of like, whenever time I listen to it, I think this is actually Primo at his peak Primo-ness.
Really?
Like, this is exactly what he does, like, taking those weird little obscure samples, and I've like, as like I produce the music, as obviously you both know, and
yeah,
I'm always looking for those little interesting, weird samples like that, and just how he finds them on the records and the type of samples that he goes for with the sort of textures fascinates me. That he sort of is able to find like a whole album's worth full of them, and this is just like exactly what he does. And here he's doing it at his very best. By the same token, I do feel it does get occasionally repetitive. Like it's
a bit by the numbers. I think it's just there are no real. There's one standout track for me, which is Invasion.
Yes, right.
Absolutely love that.
New Jersey Drive soundtrack.
New Jersey Drive. That's where I kind of know it from. Which is just 5 out of 5. Like one of my all-time favourite tracks. Really, the beat is just so really nice and hard. I love that snare fill, that little sort of snare pattern that
when it comes in, when it first comes in,
the way it starts off that snare pattern, it is brilliant.
I used to play that over and over again, that intro, just because I loved how it come in.
Me too. And just the main, like, that piano sample is classic Premier as well. That whistle that's in there, I really like.
It's proper classic.
Like the Nas scratch chorus is just like, you know, Primo's known for finding those little snippets of vocals to use for a chorus. This is just a prime example of that. I love it. Yeah,
but it obviously sustaining it, doing that all the way through an album in this way, with little variation in each track. It kind of it feels like sometimes nothing lifts it. It is very sort of one note all the way through. Even as much as I love that Primo production style and finding those weird little samples, it is kind of one note all the way through.
It's no living proof, is it?
It's no living proof. But you know, Jeru is a better rapper than both of the living proof guys. So this is that album that you wanted, or some people want. You know, it's Primo with a better rapper, but for you, it just still doesn't click.
Not quite. I mean, again, just like going back to Invasion, that there's some great lines that just always stick with me in there. Like I love the opening line, like police on my dick, like if I shot somebody.
Yeah,
I love that. And then that I was a bit about being forced into a life of crime. I really love that as well.
On the subject of lyrics, there's some really interesting stuff on this, because he is I'd call him a conscious rapper. He's very intelligent, very articulate, and he touches upon lots of different subjects. And some of this stuff on here, he takes a really interesting stance on them. In particular, which is where I think that's the one where he pretends that he's one of these bling rappers, like a P Daddy style rapper, and wakes up at the end. And it's very much like the Black Sheep track, You Mean I'm Not, where he imagines himself being a bling kind of rapper, because it was just starting to creep in, as we said, in 96, and then he wakes up and he's kind of like really happy that he isn't one of those. And I thought that was interesting. I wonder if he consciously kind of was inspired by that Black Sheep track for that one. And the other one is the one where they take back hip hop. They say hip hop's been taken hostage.
There's Not the Average, which is a really nice kind of storytelling one. It does tell a good story, and he is very clever. But you also can't ignore the fact that All Eyes on Me is a really good album, and we have to unpick maybe in the semi-final that a bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was never going to be it.
Yeah, he has got a great voice, Jeru. I will give him that much, and he can rap his arse off. He's really memorable lines,
but his career's never got above kind of like average. This is like average primo. No. Jeru's kind of average. He could have been a lot better, but I actually like his next album, which is Heroes for Hire. I think that's his best album.
Right.
You two are giving up on hip hop by that point.
Yeah, and with this album, I kind of just there's nothing, like the beats aren't bad. They're just every single one I put on, I'm just like next. Just can't be bothered to listen.
It's very simple, aren't they?
I've only really kind of it's one of those albums I've given it a go a few times over the years, and just it never makes its way into my regular kind of playlist. Basically, have I already told you my Jeru story in a previous podcast?
I don't think so, no.
Don't think so, no.
But I saw him in Bristol in 2000 or 2001, and he was an absolute tit.
Oh no!
Honestly, like and I've always just had a bit of a dim view of him ever since. Like he was about 2 or 3 hours late performing. And something had happened backstage, like with the bouncer. He had like some kind of altercation, and he'd completely thrown his toys out of the pram over it, kept everybody waiting, and then just didn't put on a very good show. It ended with him like throwing the mic on, like either on the floor or into like, or at the audience, and just making this really big kind of thud. And honestly, I kind of was surprised that it didn't, like he wasn't cut, that it didn't kick off, like and that he wasn't assaulted, basically, because people were really, really livid about it. He also claims that he was the one that invented the idea of like kung fu in hip hop, and the Wu-Tang had stolen it from him. He was quite angry about that. So yeah, I've always had it always coloured my view of him, because he presents himself as this kind of conscious rapper, but he's just a big kind of angry baby.
He's a fraud.
Yeah, that's a shame. They never meet your heroes, they say, don't you?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the first game in round one there. So that was an easy 3-0 win for Tupac's All Eyes on Me, which we'll talk about more in the semi-final.
Come on, y'all, get live, get down. Hip hop,
World Cup.
in your sound. Come on, y'all, get live, get down. Hip hop,
World Cup.
in your sound.
Hip hop, World Cup.
The second game in round one that was played earlier today was Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, which played Sadat X's Wild Cowboys, and another thrashing really for the big gun, Jay-Z, 3-0 versus Sadat X, which to me, I think must have been quite a difficult decision for everyone involved, given the high quality of both of these albums. I mean, obviously Sadat X was the loser there. Steve, what are your thoughts on that album?
Yeah, I probably disagree completely with your kind of sentiment. I think Reasonable Doubt is on a completely different level.
But is that because did you not know Sadat X at the time?
No,
Was it in particular?
No. I definitely don't know Sadat X's album as well as you two do, and it's got good production. I think it's a solidly good album. I've listened to it quite a few times. I think it's solidly good, but I don't know. And we'll talk about Reasonable Doubt a bit more in the semi-final. But I think Reasonable Doubt is a classic album, while Cowboys is just solidly good. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't quite have the same prestige. Obviously, Jay-Z made a massive splash with this album in '96. Came out all guns blazing, and just sort of captured everyone's imagination. But I do think this Wild Cowboys album. At the time, I didn't love it, but I always recognised sort of the pedigree behind it. Like, it's an absolute who's who of hip hop producers. Sort of,
it's got great production
behind the boards. There's a lot of Diamond D on there. There's the Beat Miners, Showbiz.
Yeah.
There's Pete Rock on there as well. Buck Wild. So it's got all these kind of all-star producers on it, and all of them deliver really good, solid, memorable, catchy beats, like very jazzy. There's that DITC style. But there's one on here that I love, and it's called Open Bar. It's produced by another one of those producers that always went under the radar, and I love their stuff. Alamo, he's called, and he did some stuff he's part of the Grand Puba, Sadat X crew, and he did some stuff on Puba's 2000 album. And Open Bar, to me, is just like, I would always choose that track when I did my mixtapes around this time. I just loved it. It's got this really kind of slow, smoky sample on it, jazzy. I think it's a Taja sample, and it's just a fantastic track, great hook, and I loved it. And I do think it's a really solid album. And I listened to it today just to kind of catch up on it. I was going around going, God, am I doing the right thing choosing Jay-Z over this? Am I choosing Jay-Z just because it's the album I think I like best, or is this actually a better album? But I have to admit, Sadat X was never one of my favourite rappers. He was always a bit nasal, and I think that perhaps tainted my view on it earlier when I first got it. But, really, looking through it now, it's a really strong album.
I like the nasal rappers,
you like that?
As you know.
Yeah. Who were the other big nasal rappers?
You got Eazy-E, DJ Quick,
Be Real,
Grand Puba, Q-Tip. Common's quite nasal, high pitch, yeah.
You like Danny Brown as well, don't you?
Danny Brown, yeah, definitely. Modern high-pitched nasal rapper.
Yeah.
Very good. But the Wild Cowboys, as you know, I originally did pick this over Jay-Z, and then revised my opinion earlier today. But then actually, listening to them again a bit later, I thought, well, actually, there's just really not much in it for me. And I think if you kind of applied like the alien test to this, like, a Martian arriving, not knowing anything about the history of hip hop, he's judging this just on the strength of these two albums, not knowing that Jay-Z is, the most famous, richest kind of rapper ever. Does he still prefer the Jay-Z album? I really don't know. I think maybe, but there are some I think with Sadat X, he's not the lyricist that Jay is. Like, no one's going to kind of have him in Sadat X in their kind of top 5 rappers.
He's got a kind of idiosyncratic style, isn't it?
He has. I really like. I love his voice. He's got a good delivery, but
he's instantly recognisable as well, isn't he?
He really is. But I think just lyrically, there are not. You just don't get those memorable lines in the same way that you do with a lot of other rappers, and especially somebody as good as Jay-Z. The beats on this, there are some really good ones on there, but to me, it's kind of like it's really standard issue 1996 hip hop beats. Like I don't know, it's like if you kind of fed like an AI machine learning algorithm with all the kind of 96 beats and said, make some more of those, but don't don't push the boat out too much. We don't want any kind of hits on our hands. It would like this would be the result of that kind of things. Good stuff on there, but just nothing really memorable. And it's fine, but I don't think I could add this to my list of things that. Oh, actually, I am going to start listening to this album from the 90s now. It's going to make it. It's not going to make it into my regular rotation.
I know.
It's just not memorable enough.
I don't think it ever really had any chance of winning of this tie. I thought it should have perhaps been closer than it was. Having evaluated it, I do think it's.
You can't say this. Jay-Z is this is the giant of the World Cup. He's the big gun of this World Cup.
That is true.
He should steamroller Sadat X.
But I still think taking away like the significance of Jay-Z and the fact that this is his kind of debut. I think even maybe if the Sadat X album had been one of those albums that I picked up when I kind of got back into hip hop again in the early 2000s, I think I might have much more of a fondness for it. But I think I was always put off by the cover.
Of Sadat X.
It's an unappealing album cover, isn't it? It's just
a little bit, it's a bit sort of tacky and gimmicky, really, in a way. But that kind of to then their credit, they do continue that aesthetic through the music and through the album.
They do. I mean, he's stuck to a theme, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And I quite like that. It's almost a concept album.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that was a 3-0 win for Jay-Z on that one. The third game in round one played earlier today in front of a packed crowd at Wembley for some reason. It was Ghostface Killah's Ironman against Nine. Bit closer this one. Nine's Cloud9. A little bit of a closer match. Ghostface took this 2-1. Incident-packed game.
The tie of the round.
Tie of the round. Lots of talking points, penalties, red cards, all sorts of stuff happened in this one. So come on then, Steve. What are your thoughts on this one? Why do you think Ghostface kind of edged it?
Well, I don't think he edged it. I think, for me personally, I think he won easily. But I'm just hugely disappointed because Nine is. So this when we did this with this World Cup draw, Cloud9 was the album that I went to listen to first because it's the one that I kind of remember so fondly. In fact, Danny, I think I remember you getting this album for me, and I've loved this album, and I thought. There's so many great tracks on there. I just had to get straight back into it. And it's quite catchy. It's quite simple, but I love Nine's voice. It's obviously really deep, but his cadence is really good. But the thing I like most about this album is the drums. I just love the drums on it. They just come in so well, and there's such a variety of different drums all the way through. You know, I love We Play for Keeps. And the bass on John Doe is just amazing. I absolutely love it.
It's a crunchy sounding album. Like the drums are really nice and thick and chunky.
Yeah. So I was so disappointed that these two albums were drawn together because Nine gets my popular vote, but the Ironman is just a superb album. And I'll talk more about that in the semi-final, I think.
Yeah, what's your thought on this matchup, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that the True Score machine let me down this week. So I would have liked to have seen it analyze these two albums. I'm not sure if I can completely trust the Acura 8 system for this one because it's actually come out as quite a close match on this one, despite the fact that I'm very familiar with the Ghostface Killah album and quite like it. And the fact that I'd never actually heard the Nine album until this week.
Oh.
I was under the impression that I did know this album. But I think I just dismissed Nine at this point for some reason. Maybe it's just, as we mentioned earlier, kind of we were transitioning away from hip hop and I was only checking for the sort of the names that I really knew that I liked. And maybe I'd kind of dismissed Nine as a bit of a gimmick rapper, I think, because of his voice,
just because the way he sounds. This is slept on, though, isn't it? I think Danny. I don't know, Danny, how you kind of got onto it, but if anybody's listening that hasn't heard this album, you have to listen to it.
It's
a brilliant album.
It is really worth listening to.
Yeah, it's a really it's a really interesting album, I would say. I do think it's very much got its own sound. This 9 album, it's really unusual. Like, right off the bat, it comes in with a track "No Introduction," which samples Portishead's "Biscuit," which that really took me by surprise at the time, because I was like, that's weird, really weird. Like, how have you A, heard that in the first place, and then B, been able to sample it and just sort of almost completely take the whole chunk of it?
I didn't know that, but when I was listening to this earlier, I was thinking it's a little bit sort of trip hoppy, this album.
It is quite, yeah. It's a really interesting album. I mean, like the way I knew about Nine obviously from his first album, but then he came out with Lion King, which was I think a big single. I think it was the first single off this, and it was a really good, like, big hit at the time, or certainly on the rap stations or whatever. So I loved that, and for some reason off the back of that, I was really, really excited about this album. Like, the combination of the first album being so good, and hearing Lion King. I remember, this is because, as you know, I went to New York in 1996, and we went to Times Square, and I went around looking for this on CD, and I managed to find it, and I really was not disappointed. And I think what's interesting about it is the choice of, like, the samples and the beats. Yeah. Like, the producer's a guy called Rob Lewis, which is a really, like, rubbish name for a hip hop producer. It sounds like the sort of person, like, who's in the year above you at school. So, like Rob Lewis. But he takes a really interesting approach with some of his samples and stuff. He almost like he samples like orchestral music, like classical music. There's a lot of strings and a lot of orchestral stuff, and cuts it up and chops it up. It's quite a unique. Is
he an American producer?
Yeah, he's from the Bronx, and he's got an early association with Chuck Chill Out. Yeah, I think he produced some of their album in the late 80s. I'm reading on Wikipedia. But he's a really distinctive style, and kind of carries on in this album where he left off on 9 Lives. And I mean, there's so many great tracks on this. Like, Every Man for Himself is great. We Play for Keeps. Yeah. Lion King, and then Make or Take, which is one of my, like, all-timers. I love Make or Take. It's
smooth, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah, I used to love that. I used to put it on all my mixed CDs at the time. It's got Smooth the Hustler on it as well, who had a hit, like, around the time with Broken Language.
He's got the lovely jazzy loop, hasn't it?
It's got a jazzy loop on it, which is I think it's a Ronnie Foster sample or something like that. I was looking up in the liner notes. It's one of those guys, and it's really nice bit of saxophone just looped up in there. Yeah, really nice. So I was listening to this and I was thinking, God, do I actually prefer this to Ghostface Killah? Because Ghostface Killah was always an album that I actually liked. As you
don't always like the Wu-Tang, do you?
No, I'm not a Wu-Tang guy, but, like, Ironman was one of the ones I remember us being really impressed with Ironman. Yeah, I know.
And actually, I think it came out late in the year.
Yeah.
So we would have, like, we were completely out of the hip hop loop by that point. Really, like, we were really focused on the sort of US garage stuff. But I do remember still, I guess because it was a Wu-Tang member, and because all of the other albums have been so good up until this point, maybe it was just like, right, we'll make an exception to get excited about Ghostface.
Yeah,
this is probably one of the hardest Wu-Tang albums to listen to, though. So that's really interesting that you two liked it, because it's hard listening, I think.
He's just such a good MC. Though.
He's a good MC, but had some really, really great RZA production on it, like Iron Maiden and 260. 260 was always my favourite track on this. Yeah. And I think that the quality of those two and a few of the others kind of made me hold this up as a really good Wu-Tang album. Listening to it in more detail again now, I'm seeing a few of the weaker points of it and why it's not considered to be one of the best Wu-Tang albums in the sort of hip hop really? Audience at large. Yeah, no, I've been listening to a lot of stuff recently. I don't think it's very well regarded, particularly. I think people prefer his later stuff, but yeah, I do kind of, I like this one, but in the end, I voted for 9 because I just find it a much more interesting and engaging album, and it has that kind of a different effect.
It has got a bit of a more of a unique sound, but for me, is kind of, I do like the sound, but a lot of the tracks, I don't know, didn't use particularly memorable samples, like, for my money.
Yeah, some of them maybe.
And I just, it kind of struck me that I don't know, as we were alluding to earlier, sort of with like producers moving away from sort of sample-based music, maybe a lot of the good obvious samples have just been used by this point, and the people were having to dig a little bit deeper to find good stuff, and that can really bear fruit. But with this, for me, it's all a bit kind of cookie cutter, typical 1996 unremarkable stuff, apart from, as I mentioned, the drums, which are really nice. It's got that really, really kind of nice 1996 actually kind of drum sound, like really fat, kind of heavy, reverby snares. I really
perfected the
lovely and chunky. There are lots of music around this time that kind of has that kind of really nice, big, heavy snare sort of sound. But
they've really perfected it, I think, haven't they? They'd really learned how to sort of EQ it and really give it really beef it up and really, really crisp. And on the subject sample, sorry, it was Ronnie Laws that samples on Make or Take, not Ronnie Foster, which I might have said. But yeah, Make or Take was just an incredible track to me. I think, like, when I re-listened to this, all these tracks, like Every Man for Himself and We Play for Keeps, as soon as they came on, they instantly just made me go, oh God, I love this one. Yeah. The samples, the musicality in some of the tracks. I think it's a really underrated, slept on album. I think it deserved a lot more props than it got, but obviously it didn't. And in this case, it's been beaten by Ghostface Killah. So that was a win for Ghostface Killah. And then the final match in round one was Mad Skillz from Where against Nas's It Was Written. And that was another slightly surprising 3-0 win for Mad Skillz. Very surprising. Yeah. Steve, what do you think it was about Mad Skillz that allowed it to kind of triumph over Nas in that way?
Two things. I think the Mad Skillz album is actually really good, and actually another slept on album. I've slept on it, and I've listened to it, and I just think, whoa, why did you tell me about this album? It's actually
Is this
fantastic.
Your first experience of it, Steve?
Yeah, this is my first experience of it. I don't think there's a bad track on there. I've loved listening to it, and I'll talk in more detail when we get to the semi-final. But I think the second reason that it won is that the Nas album is a poor album, and I think the biggest problem here is that he sold out. He went from having the best producers in the game producing Illmatic to letting track masters. He just crossed over, and it just didn't work. He just became this kind of mafioso rapper. And I just don't think he's as good at it as Jay-Z or Raekwon or Ghostface. And it's like he kind of ran out of steam, and I was just so disappointed with this album, and that's probably kind of adds a little bit of bias to this. And the tracks that are on there are just quite poppy, mainstreamy. What was the track that I did like? Yeah, is it? No, not. Yeah, sorry. The message. The message is the track. Sorry, that I like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally with you on that one. I think the Nas album was considered a massive disappointment at the time. In fact, I've got it written down in my dishonorable mentions column, just to talk about how it wasn't as good as it should have been. I think that's the thing, is that everybody was expecting this kind of Illmatic quality album to come out. But yeah, as you say, he crossed over.
He sold out.
Poppy hooks and stuff like that. And I think there was a lot of things that people were excited about hearing on this album that just did not live up to the hype. And I'm thinking about Nas's Coming, the Dr. Dre produced track. I think people knew about this track beforehand, and I was really excited. I thought, Nas and Dr. Dre. And it is absolutely appalling.
It's dull.
I wouldn't go that far. It's not appalling.
That track. I've always hated it.
It's not as good as it.
No,
it should have been a lot better, but I don't think it's so bad. It's the one weird thing about that track. It's twice as loud as anything else on the album, because Dr. Dre is such a good mixer and masterer. It just sounds so much better than everything else on it.
Oh, I just absolutely hate that track. You're absolutely right. He's a masterful producer, and it probably is really well made. But it's just he does all the things in that track that I hate about his later productions, like that weird kind of percussion sound, like, and he does all the big orchestral. Yeah. Drum sounds, and it's just like, it's really bad. I hate that track so much.
I like the way there's that little bit of dialogue at the beginning. I like how Dr. Dre like growls in it.
Yeah, Again, I hate that. I hate that exchange at the beginning as well.
It is a bit annoying, apart from Dr. Dre growl.
But it's got some absolute bangers on it though, as well as all the Trackmaster, the poppy stuff. Like Take It In, no, not Take It In, but I Gave You Power, the Primo team up, which is something that could have quite happily been lifted off Illmatic, to be honest with you. I love Street Dreams. It's got a Linda Clifford sample on it. Just brilliant sample.
Also sampled on All Eyes on Me,
as we'll find out. Yeah, absolutely. And I had, this is bad, but I had a little soft spot for Black Girl Lost, which is kind of like, it's got this real R&B hook on it, but I quite like that one at the time. I know.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be on a Nas album. Why didn't they just go out and do the same thing? Get all the best producers in the game, stick to what he's good at, because he is a good rapper. Yeah, but this just fell. I
think one of the kind of themes of this year and hip hop going forward, though, is that people like this did want to have crossover hits, and they wanted to make money, basically. And no one was ever going to make millions or billions, as Nas now has, from keeping on making Illmatic. So it might not have been a great album for the kind of purist golden era kind of hip hop fan, but I mean, actually, to be honest, like this was actually the kind of shock of the tournament for me, but in quite a good way.
Yeah, you got what you deserved.
No. You've we're at cross purposes here. I'm about to vindicate this album. Again, sort of, it came out kind of right in the middle of me kind of moving away from hip hop. Didn't really. I don't even think I had Illmatic at the time. So it wasn't as if I was kind of really expectant of this album or anything, but I really liked. I had Street Dreams because it was on one of those tapes that you brought back from New York, Danny.
Oh, yeah,
I think it was on the Do What tape, and I loved Street Dreams and was kind of looking forward to this album. And I think I don't know, the album didn't make an impression with me at the time, and I sort of do recall people having a bit of a dim view of it, as you've kind of spoken about. And I think I probably just internalized that as like a received opinion without really thinking about it, because listening to it again this week, I like this album a lot more than, well, I would go so far as to say that I like it, and I will start listening to it from now on. I don't think it's as bad as it's not Illmatic, but Illmatic was a once in a lifetime kind of album, really. It's in most people's top three for very good reason. He couldn't make lots more of those. I think this is actually really solid. I like lots of tracks.
I don't think anyone's arguing it's not a good album. I just think it's a different album than a lot of people are expecting. And as you say, then that became the perceived thing, is that it wasn't a good album.
It's got a bit more of a, I don't know, did Trackmasters produce all of this, or the majority of it? It's got a bit more of a consistent sound to Illmatic, which famously has like 10 different producers on it, or whatever it is. I just like the way this sounds. I think there's only one or two. There's loads of kind of 3s, 4s, 3.5s on there for me. It's all really listenable.
Yeah, I mean,
it starts off quite bad with what's the first track with sort of the guitar,
The Message.
Oh, the message.
I don't really Sting sample.
It was it. I don't really like
it's
that.
Shape of Your Heart.
Sort of Street Dreams onwards. There's loads of kind of really decent tracks on there, and I think without the weight of expectation, if this was his debut, I think it would have kind of been received a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad album. I just think people don't think it was as good as it should have been or could have been. But what it is, and he obviously went for this, and it was a success. He went for a poppier sound, and in making that sort of album, he made a really good one of those. All the tracks, the great samples, great hooks, and he's a great rapper on it. His lyrics on it are great. Yeah. I just know it's just one of those things. It's just how it's perceived.
It's made me think, because I always assumed, like, Nas is one of the big kind of jokes of the industry, isn't he? That he had this incredible debut album, and everything else was kind of progressively more shit after that. And
Yeah.
I like, as a result of that, I've never listened to like Nostradamus or any of that. I like a few of his more recent albums.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I actually went back and listened to, like, what was the third album called, Steve? Do you remember? I Am, yeah. I wonder if I kind of went back and listened to those albums now, if I'd actually like them based on my experience
where he started to go. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean,
probably not, because it's just a little bit later when it really kind of goes into that time when hip hop just started to sound different. So probably not. But based on the fact that I do love, like, Life Is Good. Steve, you know that album? That's a really good album, I think.
Yeah, it's very good album.
The first four tracks are incredible, I would say.
Yeah.
And Nasir is a pretty good kind of EP as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of interested in listening to his earlier stuff, I think.
Yeah. That was the final match in round one. So the winners that are going through to the semis are Tupac's All Eyez on Me, Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, Ghostface Killah's Ironman, and Mad Skillz From Where.
Semi-final.
World Cup. Semi-final. World Cup. Who's that going to be? World Cup.
Semi-final.
World Cup. World Cup.
Okay, you join us here pitch side at the Allianz Arena in Munich for the draw for the semi-finals of the Hip Hop World Cup 1996. Our draw master Steve Hitchcock is over there with a bag of balls. And who have you got over there with you this time, Steve? That's a familiar face.
It is a very, very familiar face. Somebody who was a big star in England's 1996 team. We've got Alan Shearer.
But contractually not allowed to speak.
No.
Haven't got the rights to his voice. No.
But he looks very happy and ready to start. By the looks of it, he's giving those balls a shake. So let's see what comes out first.
He's looking pretty fierce, actually. I better get on with this. Okay, so first out of the hat is, and this is completely random, it's Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt.
Jay-Z's
Against
your album.
Jay-Z.
Oh no! I can't believe I've done this. It's
Can't believe
going
Alan
against
Shearer's done this.
Alan Shearer, you pulled out Iron Man by Ghostface Killah.
Oh, big New York battle.
Alan.
So that's happy.
He's happy.
So that's Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt versus Ghostface Killah's Iron Man.
Yeah.
God,
Okay.
I don't even know where to start with this one.
And Alan's got next ball out. It's Tupac. All Eyez on Me.
Home tie.
Against Mad Skillz, obviously. Thanks, Alan.
That does go to show what a pro Alan Shearer is. He didn't need to draw those two balls out. We knew what the outcome was, and yet he signed a contract. He's going to take those balls out.
Absolutely.
Having said that, though, he is running around the studio now with his hand in the air, which is a little bit unprofessional.
And also, his inability to speak is quite a blessing because he hasn't mentioned his Premier League record yet either. So the scoring record, which he bangs on about on Match of the Day. So count your blessings there.
Never won the FA Cup or the World Cup. So
okay, right. So the first tie in the Hip Hop World Cup semi-final for 1996 is Jay-Z versus Ghostface Killah. I mean, what a clash of the titans that is. Two of the biggest names in hip hop. Steve, I mean, what are your thoughts on these two? Get the ball rolling.
Yeah, the two big guns for me in this year. I mean, so Iron Man for me is an absolute classic album. It's dark, it's raw, and I always say this, I prefer those long playing albums that kind of reward you for listening to it from the beginning to the end. I think it's got so many good raps, great beats, interesting samples, great skits. It's a really varied album, isn't it? It doesn't kind of have a style of like, I don't know, like Cuban Links or Liquid Sword. It does kind of like skip between different types of production.
Yeah, I'd say it sounds a bit more polished. It's quite a polished album for a RZA produced album. I don't know if you go along with that. Maybe I'm just talking in terms of the sound quality, but it's just to me this always feels quite polished. Whereas previous Wu-Tang albums, especially their debut, was quite grubby, quite grimy.
Yeah.
This kind of
upgraded his kit, hasn't he?
He's upgraded his kit.
That Wu-Tang money comes in from the album sales. He bought himself like an O2R digital mixer, something like that,
and a Porter Studio.
Yeah. But I think it kind of sounds quite a lot like the Raekwon album, personally.
Well,
in terms of the beats and the samples and stuff like that, in terms of the choice.
I mean, I might be embarrassing myself kind of saying this because I haven't kind of listened to the two back to back today or anything, but I don't know. I understand the kind of how they were released chronologically, but were they necessarily recorded chronologically? I wonder if like maybe this and Raekwon might have been recorded at a similar time and they just broke up the two releases because they were quite similar. Is that, I don't know if that's known or whether that's you think that might be a possibility?
Possibly. I don't know that, but they definitely have Capadonna, Raekwon and Ghost all featuring very heavily, and they're all three of them are in their prime, aren't they? They're just they flow so fantastically on so many of the tracks.
I think I'd prefer Raekwon on this than I do on his own album. On
Faster Blade,
some of his best verses on this.
Yeah, on Faster Blade, that is his best track ever, and it's not even on his album. It's just him rapping, and that is just one of my favourite tracks on the whole album.
I also like the lack of vanity that he lets other rappers go first on a lot of tracks. They take the first verse and things like that. It's a very kind of democratic album, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where they've got a group of people. It's almost like a group. It's like a Wu-Tang album, basically. I like that about it. You never quite know who's going to come in first. But I think I would agree with you about the similarity to Raekwon. I think that Raekwon was also, for a Wu-Tang album was quite polished.
That's the one it's most similar to. It doesn't sound anything like Takao. Doesn't sound anything like Liquid Swords.
Yeah.
ODB's album had a kind of quite a unique sound as well, a very sort of sloppy,
muddy,
lollopy kind of album. Whereas this and Raekwon, they're both kind of cut from a similar cloth, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
All three of them suit the beats on here so well. They're just such a nice fit. I think that's what makes the album so good. And the whole of the album is greater than the sum of its parts because of how well that works.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it comes in strong with Iron Maiden. I love Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
it's such a great start to it. Heavy beat, like really, really good classic RZA beat.
And that dialogue at the beginning as well.
Yeah, I love the dialogue samples.
Message for Smokey, brilliant.
Brilliant. And there's more of that. I think it starts 260 as well, 260, and that is like my other big one, Al Green sample. Yeah. Really well used, but really it's just a loop, and he likes his loops, doesn't he? There's probably a lot more going on than just a loop. But
I don't know. That is the one. The thing with this album that I was going to say about it is that it is quite a simple production. Like there are just a lot more just straight up loops on this. And this is why I wonder if they were recorded and released like out of sequence, because it goes Raekwon, Jizza, and then this one, and Liquid Swords I think is just a much better, more detailed, richer production. There's more in it than kind of this, which is quite simple. That being said, just talking about 260, which again is my favorite, that Al Green sample is just, it's so simple but so astonishingly done as well. I don't know, I think what he's done, I think he just sampled the right channel. Because if you listen to the original, there's like a much brighter string sample in the left channel. So he's just sampled one channel, monoed it. I think it's pitched down just by a semitone or something, maybe not even that. A little bit of a filter on it, and that's about it. And the bass is like he's tweaked the bass, but he's somehow taken that sample. It makes it sound so menacing.
Yeah, I know, it's masterfully done.
It's
one of those situations it sounds simple, but you or I couldn't do it. I know. I don't know how you would.
I think you maybe could with this, because I think I've kind of described quite well what he's done.
But I reckon there's something else going on. There's some special sauce happening.
There might be, but it is quite simple. But it doesn't sound. how he's got this knack of taking like a soul sample and making it sound like it's come from like a horror film or something. It just sounds really menacing and
brilliantly done. I do. There's loads of really great tracks on there. I like Winter Wars, as you said. The Faster Blade is great. Iron Maiden 260. What's
Daytona.
the one? Wildflower's a nasty little track, isn't it? Is it Wildflower? It's all the sex stuff on it and talking about women.
It's Kamei
does that as well.
Kamei,
really kind of.
I think Kamei and Fish are my favourite tracks. I think I have slightly different
Fish is monstrous.
Sweet Fish.
Ghost, the way Ghost raps on there, is amazing.
Talking absolute nonsense though.
Oh yeah,
which is exactly. I would say the best lyrical performance on this is on Daytona, which again is on the most simple beat you could possibly imagine. Tiny little kind of half a bar loop sort of thing.
Yeah,
Nautilus.
But the rapping is crazy, isn't it?
Oh, the rapping is incredible.
What is he going on about?
All
He's just
three of them.
Stream of consciousness, isn't it?
I think to me that is my favourite Raekwon verse. I just love the way it kicks off about, I'm not going to kind of rap it myself. We all know it, but
go
on. I wouldn't want to. I'd do it too well. I think I wouldn't want to take the shine away from Raekwon. But I wonder if like those other two verses, Capadonna and Ghostface, are almost as good as it. And I think Capadonna really does himself proud on this album, generally speaking, being on it with two kind of really good rappers.
He holds his own.
I mean, Ghostface is considered by a lot of people as the best rapper ever.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite hard to argue with that. Like, he is incredible.
He's consistently brilliant. Yeah.
No, but
all I got is you. The way he raps on there is amazing. You go back and listen to that. I mean, it's
really emotional.
But he's quite heavily quoted from some of the stuff in there as well. It's a really good rap.
Yeah. I do find though, however, that after you kind of get past Motherless Child, which I love, I think I was on the Sunset Park soundtrack as well, which is kind of where I first heard it. I do kind of think it loses its way slightly, and some of those tracks towards the end are a little bit less memorable, let's say.
After the Smoke is Clear is good.
After the Smoke is Clear is good.
I like Marvel. I like the way it switches. What I'm saying about the variety of the album. Suddenly you get these different type of tracks at the end, which kind of make it worth listening to.
I could have quite happily ended it after Motherless Child, and being perfectly honest with you. The ones towards the end, I found myself just skipping through them out of formality, but I listened to the rest all the way through when I was reevaluating it, and I think that tells you a lot about how I feel about those end tracks. But obviously, if you like a nice long player, like you say, Steve, then you're going to lap up those last tracks.
I think it's a good. I think Marvel is a really good ending. It's just
I just think that I wasn't the biggest fan of Cuban Links either. I think you'd make such a good single album out if you combine those two best tracks from Raekwon's album and Ghostface's album. You'd have an absolute, that probably would be the best Wu-Tang album then, I think.
Yeah. So how do you think this album compares with Jay-Z then? I mean, they're quite, different, sonically different. I think they're very different, and so where do you even start to compare these two?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like an awful lot to say about Jay-Z on this album, to be honest. Like, it was one of those ones where I just wasn't really checking for new artists at this point in my life, so I've never formed an attachment to it. There are a couple tracks I like on there, like Coming of Age, I think is a really good story, like really good beat, really good story, great rapping.
The back and forth on that track is really good, isn't it?
It is
with Memphis,
and I don't know, I can't take away how good a rapper Jay-Z is, or his kind of place in hip hop, but I don't know, I've never been the biggest fan really. I like his stuff from Blueprint onwards a bit more. I think I remember him kind of being on Top of the Pops doing Hard Knock Life, like in '97, and just thinking it was just so stupid.
What do you think about the beats on this album, Larry?
I think they're just kind of all right. For me personally, I can see sort of why people, would really rate the album, but No, yeah, it's just all a bit kind of.
Lots of people say this is
for me, really.
Lots of people say this is his best produced album, and I think it's got some great samples on it. I think it's got some really well chosen samples.
I think it's of its time.
Yeah.
I think, if I had never deviated away from hip hop, if I'd still liked it and been checking for new artists as much as I was, a year or two previous, I kind of fancy that I would really like this album and I would kind of have it as one of my favourites, but I didn't, and I don't.
Yeah, for me, this is a classic album. When I first got this album, I was so excited. I just listened to it constantly. I think, Danny, I think you were probably into this album when it first came out.
Yeah, I mean, I was so excited about this album coming out. I was first introduced to him on Can I Get Open by Original Flavour, which came out, I think, in '93. And his verse on that, I just absolutely loved it. And I was looking forward to him releasing some of his own material. And eventually this came out. Really, really excited when it came out. We knew kind of Dead Presidents already. And then it came in with Can't Knock the Hustle with Mary J. Blige, who I also liked around that time, like with the album My Life, and which was only '94. And it just had all the right elements. I think a lot of what I love about it, let's start with the beats, is that they use a lot of really great soul samples. Yeah. Really great recognisable samples that I like, tracks that I actually love as well, just to listen to in their own right. Like you say, Coming of Age uses Inside You.
Well, Inside You, it's just amazing.
And Brooklyn's Finest uses Ohio Players. What's the Politics as Usual is the Stylistics Hurry Up This Way Again sample, and that is one of my favourite soul songs. So, and it was just flipped so well on this. I mean, I absolutely love what they did with it on that track.
Is there a Bohannon sample on this?
Yeah, that's what is it? Cashmere Thoughts. Yeah.
But the thing that this album does well, Danny, is it doesn't just use samples well. It also takes great quotable hip hop samples, and in almost every single track it's quoting like Nas or somebody famous, and I think actually I think they put a lot of thought into doing that. Well, in terms of like the hooks and stuff and the samples of other rappers and stuff on the hooks. I think it's a good nowhere more so than Devils, which is, I think that was always perhaps my favorite on here, the Primo one, using the Snoop Doggy Dogg sample on the chorus and things like that. I thought it was really well done. That is one of DJ Premier's best beats, I think.
It's a hard beat.
It's a hard beat, really good beat, memorable beat as well. I just think the beats, I think Jay-Z's flow on this, his rhymes schemes are really clever. This is the only Jay-Z album I own and the only one I've ever heard. Obviously I've heard his later singles, but this is the only Jay-Z album I've ever, I've got, and I just think I think it's masterful the way he rhymes on these tracks.
9 to 5 is how you survive. So many classic lines on it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be a tricky one to vote on, I think, boys. I think that's pretty much what we're learning here. Should we do it? Should we go for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, Steve, let's start with you. Which one are you going for? Who are you voting for?
So, love Jay-Z, classic album, but I just think Ghostface Killah is absolute classic. I would rather listen to that all day. I could listen to it non-stop forever. So, Ironman for me.
Cool. Right, Larry, what are you voting for?
Yeah, I mean, Ghostface Killah isn't quite the album that I always imagined it was. Too much filler on there. But that being said, I would much rather listen to this any day of the week than Jay-Z.
Okay, cool. Well, it's a bit of it's all academic. I'm going to go for Jay-Z. I think it was always an album I much preferred listening to.
It's more your kind. It's more your kind of sound, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it there. Yeah, it's just my sound palette that I loved around the time. Smooth soul samples and things like that. So yeah, Jay-Z gets my vote. But that doesn't stop Ghostface Killah winning our first semi-final 2-1.
Get on.
Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
World Cup.
It's in your town. Come on, y'all, get live, get down.
World Cup.
It's in your town.
Okay, moving on to our second semi-final in the Hip Hop World Cup of 1996. We find the rank outsider Mad Skillz, From Where, coming up against Tupac's juggernaut of an album, double album, All Eyes on Me. You know, David and Goliath in many ways, but you know, there's pros and cons to both albums. So what are we saying about this one, Steve?
Okay, well, just start with Mad Skillz, I think.
Yeah.
Like I said in the last round, it's an album that I hadn't listened to before, and I really upset and frustrated that I haven't really, because he has got mad skills. I think he's a great rapper. He sounds a bit like Big L, don't you think? I kind of thought he's not quite as like punchy as Big L, but
he's from that same sort of lyrical school, isn't he? It's all
punchline rappers.
Punchline rapper, yeah, definitely, but not quite as good.
Not quite as good, but also just he just sounds quite similar. Sometimes I'm like, is that really Big L rapping there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's not a bad observation actually.
And there's just no bad tracks on this album, and the you know, a lot of good producers on here. It's got Jay Dilla, Beatnuts, Buckwild, Large Professor, Clark Kent, and I love Move Your Body. I think that was one I knew anyway. That was when I came across that track. So, I know that one. But some really classic lines on there, good rapping, and some good kind of like boom bap. I think that's still on there for a '96 album. Which
this is proper hip hop, isn't it?
Proper hip hop.
Yeah. I was really pleased with it.
Yeah, and it's a really good album. Back then, I was always more a fan of the beats and the music than the lyrics. So the way I would often select the albums that I committed to buying was by looking at which producers were involved. And with this one, I was looking down the list of the producers, and it's another one of those that's kind of got an all-star lineup on there, which kind of sometimes it was irrelevant who the rapper was to me. I like the beats, I like the producers. Yeah. So I looked down this one. You've got the Beatnuts, you've got Buckwild, you've got Large Professor, you've got Sean J. Period, also of the Alcoholics and Down South. But also interestingly, you've got a couple tracks produced by Jay Dilla on here, which I didn't actually at the time sort of equate it being him, because I'm one of these who doesn't understand what the big fuss is about Jay Dilla. I don't really understand it. And on here he's got a couple of tracks, and they aren't two of the best.
What did he produce on this?
It's Going Down and The Jam. And you can kind of hear his style a little bit, you know.
But they're not the best tracks, like you said.
They're not the best tracks at all.
I really like It's Going Down.
Yeah, no, It's Going Down is great, and it's the opening track as well, which is a really good track. But I just think, you know, it was an all-star lineup of producers which really attracted me to get it. I got it. I was really not disappointed with what I heard. I thought Mad Skillz is such a great rapper. He plays a lot on the fact that he's obviously not from New York, even though he is. He's from Virginia. Loads of really good beats, some really great, memorable lyrics. But ironically, I think having selected it on the basis of the producers that are on it, the big name producers, my favourite track on it is actually produced by Mad Skillz himself, which is Tongues of the Next Shit.
Yeah, that's great.
That's brilliant,
which
isn't
is
it?
just
that's one of the. That's such a great loop, isn't it?
Great loop, great beats, the lyrics on it, great hook, just everything about it. It was always, again, I always judge it by which is the one I would have put on a mixtape, and it's that one. So yeah, just a strong album. Loved it at the time. I do think there's a few at the end, the Sean J. Period track. Sorry, Sean, I know you're a big listener of this podcast, but your beats don't really do it for me towards the end. Good though they are, they're all right, but they're not, they don't compare to the rest.
Remind me what tracks they are.
So he did All In It and An Unseen World, I think. No, Unseen World was Easy LP. I think he did Street Rules and All In It.
Yeah, that's the weak part of the album.
Definitely. And I think there's a DJ Clark Kent track. I think he did the Movie Body one. I think it was. Yeah,
I don't really like that. That's kind of like it's going for a radio sort of hit kind of fodder, isn't it?
Absolutely. But there's some really nice, a couple of really nice Buckwild tracks on here. Just one sample in Eyez.
Doing Time in the Cypher is brilliant.
Doing Time in the Cypher, Buckwild.
That's class.
Can we just talk a bit about Buckwild, because he's another one of these producers that to me doesn't get as much props as he should. Like, he's part of the DITC crew. Yeah. He has been responsible for so many great tracks over the years, but for some reason he's not held up in the same esteem. Proper boom bap, like he did the stuff he did on Eyez's album. The tracks on there. I just don't think he got as many props as he should have over the years.
Agreed.
But hey, that might just be me. Yeah. So yeah, what are there any more thoughts on the Mad Skillz album before we start talking about?
I love this album. I think this is one of my kind of probably not a top 10 of all time, but it's on the periphery of that. And Yeah, I think I'm sort of quite the same with you as you actually, Danny. Is like music is kind of what I really pay attention to with hip hop mainly, more so than lyrics. Not that I don't like it, good lyricism, but I seem to remember like Mad Skillz. I remember reading about him in like Hip Hop Connection, and they were like really focusing. Or they made such a big kind of thing about how good a rapper he was, and like to the point where he was and he kind of references it himself, like being like on next level kind of sort of thing, really, just like doing stuff that other rappers hadn't really done before. Just such a clever kind of punchlines and sort of similes and all that kind of stuff. But the main thing, like the beats, it's got some of my favorite beats of all time on this. I absolutely love Doing Time in the Cypher. Love that sample.
Yeah, so VA in the House has got
Virginia's in the House is really good.
The Joe sample on there from
tons of the next shit has got a great beat.
Funnily enough, that Tons of the Next Shit loop isn't listed in the liner notes, and I'm curious what it is. I'm dying to find out what that is.
It's really you'd think that it would stand out like a sore thumb. It's a really distinctive kind of sort of keyboard part on there.
Yeah, it's probably somebody like Bobby Lyle or somebody, one of these keyboardists that had jazz funk albums out in the 70s, one of those, but he's kind of not used enough of it to merit a sample clearance or something like that.
I wonder if, like, just talking about like 96 being a transitionary year, transitioning into a sort of a more blingy kind of vibe. Conversely, I wonder, like, especially with the last few tracks on this, I don't know if you agree with this, Steve, you probably know more about this than Danny, but it seems to me like a lot of this is kind of like a precursor to like the whole backpacker kind of rap that was, like the whole raucous kind of thing in the late 90s, where especially with like Unseen World and Unseen World, like the Posse Cut, where they've got this sort of super scientifical kind of lyrical style where they use lots of kind of polysyllabic words and just try and cram as many syllables as possible into verses in a way that doesn't necessarily fit very well, in a way that you would then see kind of people like LP and Big Just really kind of master a year or two later. Yeah, this kind of, to me, seems like it's a bit of a like an antecedent of that whole vibe. I don't know if you cottoned on to that at all.
No, I didn't think that, but I think you're definitely right. I think we are seeing a few albums that aren't in this World Cup that's starting to move towards that more kind of underground.
Yeah, and like you've got like the last track in it. Yeah, like the last track in Inherit the World, which I don't know if Danny, you mentioned it just now. I don't remember whether you liked the beat or not, but I think it's a great beat, and this is one of my favourite tracks of all time. It's really, really kind of visual, kind of I don't know. It's weird. Like he's rapping about kind of having somehow wiped out all of humanity from being like the best rapper. And then having done that, kind of regretting it because there are no more foes to vanquish. It's kind of like a classic kind of like a Greek tragedy or something. It's just it's a weird thing to be rapping about.
But a clever one though.
It's a clever one,
interesting concept,
and it plays into that thing about that's the kind of thing that rappers like those backpack rappers, they would rap about that kind of thing, whereas you wouldn't a couple of years ago you wouldn't have found Nas rapping about that,
I think there's a lot more going on intellectually with this album. Definitely he's takes more of a cerebral approach, definitely. I quite like that. I quite like the thing. Wrong, those ones towards the end, they're all right beats and stuff like that, but they just didn't grab me as much as the earlier ones. But I think that's a good point about moving towards that. I mean, he could quite happily be a member of the Hieroglyphics, something like that, or something like that, with this kind of verbal wordplay and stuff like that.
And now that I think about it, he did have some tracks out on Raucous,
right?
So that kind of that checks out.
That's cool. So we're all agreed that this is a great album.
Yeah.
But like, where does it sit in comparison to its opponent in the semi here, Tupac's All Eyes on Me? I mean, it's chalk and cheese basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, Steve, I'm going to let you go first on this one because I don't even know where to start with this album.
Well, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, I obviously really like Tupac, and so I'm not gonna.
You finally got one in.
I'm gonna, yeah. We've finally got a Tupac album, but actually not his best.
And he's
album.
in the semis.
And he's in the semi-final. This is like crazy, and this is like the version of Tupac which I don't like as much. You know, Me Against the World is more kind of the Tupac that I like, but this is an album that I love and I listen to loads, but it is flawed. It is 27 tracks. 5 of them should not even be on the album because they're just rubbish. And you could easily pick. So, No More Pain, What's Your Phone Number, Checkout Time, Run the Streets, Heaven Ain't Hard to Find. I skip those every time I get to them. Just don't.
I will just say, Steve, about No More Pain. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of it either, but the drum programming is quite notable on that. Like, it's got that kind of like a triplet, like a southern triplet swing in it that you didn't typically find in hip hop back then, like outside of the South.
He's it's produced by Devontae Swing from Jodeci, the Jodeci producer. So it's kind of got that kind of, it's a Timberlandy type thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
The hats on it. It's quite interesting.
What's the thing? It's got so many different
and What's Your Phone Number is
producers
another
on
one
there.
with an unusual beat as well.
But there's so many different producers kind of fighting for different styles, and you know, and Tupac is trying to be really kind of thugged out, isn't he? And some of the guest rappers kind of contribute to that kind of nonsense with like the Outlaws or whatever they're called. They don't really kind of, you know, when you've got like Dre and Snoop and Nate on there, the tracks are so much better. But we would have had an unbelievable album if he just picked the 13 best tracks. Yeah, I think we could say that this would be one of the best albums of all time if it just had the 13 best tracks. We could have an unbelievable album, but he's always going to want to make loads of money. So that's why there's kind of 2 albums, and you know, everyone was desperate to hear him after he had been in prison for a year or whatever, however long he was in there. So I get the fact that it had to be
got lawyers' fees to pay.
Lawyers' fees to pay. And it was the first double album, I think, in hip hop history. So there was a lot kind of riding on it. And so I still love it. I just get so frustrated because I think it is ultimately flawed.
Yeah, it's flawed. I think the biggest flaw it has is it's just too much. It's too overblown. There's too many tracks. Totally agree that he could have cut it down to a single, absolutely belting one single album, you know, a single disc. However, I do, you know, all of my favourite ones, apart from Can't See Me, they're all on disc 1. Disc 1 is where it's all the good stuff for me. Yeah, I love disc 1. Is like I could have completely got rid of disc 2, but just jumped Can't See Me over onto the first disc, and I would have been perfectly happy.
Yeah. What about Holler at Me? I love Holler at Me, and All Eyes on Me is a great track.
Yeah, that uses the Linda Clifford sample again, like we talked about on the Nas album.
Yeah, it doesn't use it as well as Nas.
No, it doesn't, does it?
Anywhere near.
And I just don't. I can't even remember a lot of the ones on that second album. I don't even remember how a lot of them go.
They had the remix of California Love as well, which is just silly because the original is just like an all-time banger, basically.
Yeah.
Like the remix is just really limp.
Yeah, I never quite understood that. Why we got the Intimate Connection version of it rather than the piano-led one? But there you go. But
and how can you badly sample that track as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It sounded like a replayed Dre thing as well. Like he likes to replay stuff. But listen, I just need to quickly talk about a track on here that is one of my absolute all-time favourites. Not just Tupac track, but just track of all time, and that's Scandalous. Daz on there, it is proper music. He's got a live bass line going on. He's got Rhodes going on. He's got guitars. He's got Nate Dogg singing the hook. The beat, it just kicks in. It's one of those tracks that gives me chills every single time I hear it.
I think it might be his best track.
Oh,
100%. Like Daz's best track, maybe.
Oh, Daz's best production, definitely. I absolutely love that. And the other thing about this album is it coincided with me passing my driving test back in 1996. I think it came out in February 96, and that's the month I passed my driving test. So this is the one I put on my tape, and I used to listen to this on tape. Yeah, Steve, I used to take you over to football training, I recall, and I used to play this in the car. The one we always used to bump was All About You. as well. We used to love that one. Uses the Cameo Candy sample. Just a great car track.
Do you know what?
Just
Now that you mention that, and I thought I was going to mention this anyway, but I remember when you first passed your test. I remember you came to see me up at my work. I used to work at a tyre garage. And you came up to see me, I think, like the day you got your car. I think you had Thompson in the car with you, and you were playing like this album, basically. It always stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
Got a heavy play.
Oh, 100%. It was my car album. Yeah. Heavy play in the old Mini Metro.
I think Can't See Me got played a lot, because that's just, I think that's my favourite track on the whole album. I think
it's brilliant. Can't See Me.
It's heavy, isn't it? It's pure hip hop.
The legend goes that it was intended for Helter Skelter, the Dre and Cube album, but they nicked it.
I love the way that Tupac raps on this, though. It's so it's really angry, emotional, urgent, performance. Just going back to Scandalous, is I couldn't detect that there's that it's based on a sample or an interpolation. Like if it is an original composition, that is just so much more impressive.
Yeah, if you look at the credits, it credits Tupac and Daz Dillinger. That's it.
That is really impressive. It's I think it's all new music. I think it's
brilliant.
Just composed just for that track. Fantastic piece of music, but the playing on it, and he says Daz, stop playing around on that piano. So in my head it's Daz on the roads. It's fantastic. Just so many great high points on this album. Some of Daz's other beats are a bit kind of keyboard beat.
Well, this is the thing with Daz, isn't it? He kind of oscillates between like these incredible beats like Scandalous and Let's Play House and then
One More Day,
and then he's also got things like I don't know, just really forgettable kind of like Two of America's Most Wanted on this. It's just a kind of third tier tinny kind of beat. I don't get his quality control, or whether that was out of his hands or he just liked to kind of spread the stars around. But it just astonishes me how he can be so capable and so incapable as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tupac actually, I think he's a really great rapper. I think he does rap really well on here. It's just the stuff he raps about is just so. He's just gone so thug at this point.
He's too far gone. But I think you've got a lot of high-profile producers on here doing some really great stuff. I mean, DJ Quick, there's a DJ Quick produced track on it.
Oh, Hearts of Men is my second favorite track.
Not the best.
Not top tier Quick. Still a decent beat.
I really love How Do You Want It? That's a good beat.
Yeah. How Do You Want It? Yeah. Quincy Jones sample.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the video for that track?
Probably.
It's filthy. It basically amounts to it's practically porn.
Right.
I used to have like a Death Row 2 Gangster TV VHS. And it had that on it, and it like the unedited version. And it's just
Is it around a swimming pool by any chance?
It's in. I think it's in like it's a jacuzzi kind of thing. Just typical. You can just imagine it. You
just should not put rappers anywhere near water. They're like gremlins.
Yeah.
The minute you do, women's clothes start falling off. Beach balls start getting thrown around. Anyway, okay. So should we vote on this one then? I'm going to start with you, Larry. What are you going for on these two?
Yeah, I mean, for me, with Tupac, I think apart from you've got 3 or 4 like all-time classic tracks on there that we've kind of gone over already, a handful of average to good tracks, and just loads of filler. Just the by virtue of it being a double album, it didn't need to be. It's a smart move financially, and there's something for everyone on there, like in terms of musical styles, but it just dilutes it too much for me. I find it hard to imagine anyone sort of really loving it all the way through. Whereas Mad Skillz, like I said, it's one of my all-time favourites. It's the highest scoring album for me this year. I'm definitely going for Mad Skillz on this one.
Okay, so that's one for Mad Skillz. For me, as much as I love Mad Skillz and recognise that it is the hip hop lovers' choice, The Tupac album just meant so much more to me back at the time.
Yeah.
As I say, it's my first car album that I bumped a lot. I just absolutely loved it. Really excited when it came out. Really wasn't disappointed. Yes, there's too much on it. Could have done with a bit of editing, but I just used to listen to it loads and loads. So yeah, I'm going to go for Tupac, which makes it 1-1. So Steve, you've got the deciding vote on this one.
Oh, this has got to hurt, Steve. I know you want to vote for Tupac, but I know that your heart, that your head, makes you kind of, as the hip hop purist in you, wants to vote for Skillz.
Yeah, and this is really exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's just like we're in extra time here, aren't we? It's crazy, and I think in this situation, if
Steve's dream and his nightmare.
Tupac is in the
Sophie's choice.
I think if I'd had the Mad Skillz album for a longer period of time, I think I would have loved it and I would be voting for it. But I really do love All Eyes on Me. I love Tupac, and it is flawed, but I still love it. So I'm going to vote for All Eyes on Me.
So there we have it. All Eyes on Me by Tupac wins the second semi-final and goes through to play Ghostface Killah's Ironman in the final.
Whoa.
Exciting times. What a time to be alive. Join us after these messages. There aren't any messages.
World Cup. The final. World Cup. The final. World Cup. The final. World Cup. The final.
You're back with us here at the Allianz Arena in Munich. We're still pitch side. For some reason, we've now been joined by John Barnes and Adrian Childs. Again, they can't talk, but they're here anyway. Listen, this is a massive World Cup. We've been spoiled this year, haven't we? We've had loads of great albums. We've whittled it down to our finalists, which are Ghostface Killah's Ironman and Tupac's All Eyes on Me. Fellas, this is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great matchup, isn't it? Bigger. We've had a good World Cup. I mean, Mad Skillz have had a good tournament, and
unlucky to go out. Unlucky to go out, Mad Skillz. You know.
Yeah,
they'll be disappointed. Done well. Cool. So, the final. Who wants to start on this one, Larry? Let's go first with you. What are you going for?
Yeah, I think these are the kind of I wouldn't have put Tupac in the final personally, but I can see why he's there, and it's a seminal album. Ghostface Killah, I think some see this as the pinnacle, as the first wave of Wu-Tang. Personally, in the cold light of day, it's just a little bit average for me, kind of everything taken into account. That being said, it's got the most bangers on it. I think consistently. It's just All Eyes on Me is far too long. It's a chore to listen to for that reason. I've got to go for GFK.
Hey, GFK gets one vote in the final. Steve, how are you seeing it?
Yeah, I disagree with you, Larry. I think the Ghostface Killah, I think, is a way above average. I think this is the third in a trilogy of great Wu-Tang albums, from Cuban Links, Liquid Swords, and this one. So many great tracks. Just the rapping on this, I think, makes it kind of stand out. Probably, really well matched to RZA's production. But I just love the stream of consciousness rapping on here is just crazy. I obviously love Tupac's album, and so many great memories, and I will always go back and listen to it and enjoy it. But it's Ghostface Killah away for me. Classic album.
Oh, there we have it. So that's a 2-0 head start for Ghostface. He takes the World Cup trophy.
Are you going to go for Tupac?
Will there be a consolation goal?
But yeah, let's see if there's a consolation goal. Well, look, I mean, I've said it a few times. I'm not the world's biggest Wu-Tang guy. Don't love their stuff as much as everyone else, but I will say I do love this album. This is one of the better ones that I sort of, I did like back in the day. I think there's a load of really, really great tracks on it. I do find it's quite hard work towards the end, as I mentioned, some of those later tracks. But I do recognise, it is the better hip hop album. It is the better album of the two. Yeah, I can't separate the way I felt about it with what my head's telling me. And this was the album I used to bump in my car when I first passed my test. It just meant everything to me. I listened to it loads, more so the first disc, as I say. The second disc wasn't quite a big a fan of, apart from Can't See Me. So in terms of, I feel I would be betraying this album if I didn't vote for it. So I'm going to go for Tupac's All Eyes on Me. So it does get a consolation goal, meaning a 2-1 win for Ghostface Killah, which is our winner of the 1996 Hip Hop World Cup final.
I think most people wouldn't really argue with that. I think your classic kind of your Martian or your 100 average hip hop people voting for this. I think most people looking at this lineup would say, Ghostface is going to win that.
Yeah, absolutely. In a way, I'm pleased that you two voted for it and gave it that victory, the 2-0 win, which allowed me to then go and vote with my heart, the album I would genuinely enjoyed more. There's no way I could have voted for Ironman. As good an album as I think it is, I just couldn't have gone for anything other than Tupac. But there you have it. Yeah, I think rightfully so. I think a lot of hip hop fans would agree that that's a worthy winner.
It is nice that Tupac has finally kind of not only got into a tournament, but has gone all the way as well. He is such a big figure. One of the biggest figures ever. He does he deserves to have a shot.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's good to see him there in the final. And if there's one person who does know a lot about getting to the later stages of a tournament, as he did with his England team back in 1996 at Euro 96, Sheringham, Shearer, Pearce, all the other figures, Gaza, of course, is ex-England boss Terry Venables, who joins us on the line now. Brilliant. From his home. I've been looking forward to this. Yeah, we've been looking forward to this. Terry, hi, it's great to have you on the podcast. Don't have a lot of time.
How you doing, all right?
So many things I want to ask you about. Listen, back in Euro 96, you were at the helm for the England team.
Yeah.
Got all the way. We had all the antics with Gaza in the dentist chair, and we got through to that semi-final. We were just a whisker away. Were you aware as that was all happening, that you were in the midst of such a great year for hip hop, or was it very much that's something you were going to think about after the tournament was done and sort of get the business out of the way first and then start listening to all those great albums? Terry, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's one of those things that you think, well,
Terry,
nightmares about it.
Eltel?
What's he saying, Dan?
Era.
I can't hear him this end. I presume you've got him on your earpiece.
He's breaking up again.
It's really.
I'm gonna have to write a strongly worded email to this phone company.
Real. It's not.
I really am. This is.
I'd recommend going straight to the chief exec with this.
I think
one.
I'm gonna have to. I'm sorry.
This is not a bog standard call centre job.
No. I'm really deflated about this because week after week I'm making you promises about people.
Yeah.
Who we are going to speak to, and they're just not. And we're wasting their time, as well as our listeners.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you are wasting everyone's time.
Yeah.
With this.
Well, hopefully in the next
one. Let's do it next time, then. Let's see if we can. Yeah. We will nail it one of these times.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely nail it. Okay. Well, anyway, for now, look, listen. If you agree,
Zoom might work.
Yeah.
Very popular these days.
Yeah, we should try it, shouldn't we? Listen, if you agree or disagree with our winner, or you just want to share your thoughts on the 90s hip hop in general, then hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Hip Hop World Cup. But for now, thanks for listening, and until the next episode, we're ghosts like Patrick Swayze.
A battle to the death. Classic albums clashing till there's only one left. A killer contest, but before we get to it, there's rules to this game, so let me tell you how we do it. 8 classic albums, 1 classic year. Draw 'em out the hat and chew the fat right here. We rate 'em, we slate 'em, discuss 'em and debate 'em, analyze the beats and quote the lyrics verbatim. When all is said and done, we put it to the vote and tell you which of them has won. Then it's to the semis and the final for the final cassette or CD. So who will it be? We going all in, so on the sound of the whistle, let the games begin.
Over the years, we've not done as well as we should have done because